Good morning, Gamecock fans. Today is Tuesday, April 22nd, the year of our Lord 2025, and you are joining me, JC Shurburtt, for coffee. Game action last night. Softball team played on a Monday, the rare Monday game, and they won 7-0, sweeping Kentucky in a softball series, first SEC sweep of the year for Ashley Chastain Woodard and her team. They're now 35-11 overall. 10-8 in the SEC, ranked 13th, 12th, depending on which one of those softball polls you like to look at. There's many of them, just like in baseball. I think in baseball we've coalesced around the D1 baseball poll. I think ESPN uses that and other major media outlets, but there's a lot. So 13th or 12th, depending on who you ask, and a good sweep. I think you hear over and over about how brutal the conference is, and it is in most sports, and especially the diamond sports. And so, anytime you can sweep anybody, I think that's a good deal, and certainly helps the record. Now winning record in SEC play, they're kind of heading towards some good stuff for the postseason if they can keep this up. Baseball's back in action tonight against a team that I wish nobody would schedule at any sport at South Carolina. I don't know about football, but baseball and basketball, North Florida, they just the Ospreys have been a pain in the side, but midweek game, a chance to go 4 out of your last 5 heading up to Kentucky in baseball this weekend. So certainly they're all pretty much, they need to win at a high clip to make the NCAA tournament. So they're all important. You don't want to lose one in the midweek that you can win, but that's at Founders Park. First pitch is at 6:30 this evening. Had some football news, and then we'll transition to our football segment. I've got to go on 107.5 FM with Bill, my good friend Wild Bill Gunner, this morning, and Jen and Preston. So this will be a little shorter episode. I'm trying to balance a lot of things this morning, but that's okay. Always good to talk with you. But Kam Pringle enters the transfer portal. Now, let's go back to what I've been saying about the transfer portal as far as outbound players at South Carolina goes. I said eventually there will be a player that doesn't play a lot that we all like, or that some of you like, or that I like, or that, Hale likes, or whatever. Because we all have our favorites. We all, we follow recruiting and follow these players from high school. Maybe they're from the area you're from. Maybe you just really like them as a player. Maybe you were happy about a recruiting win. Maybe it's all the above. Maybe you knew them. But that's going to happen. What you want to avoid is losing anybody at a position where the numbers are low or any difference makers. That's basically your 2 categories. It's also a little tougher to lose in-state guys, and Kam Pringle is an in-state guy, so it's tough to lose those guys. You don't want to. You want all of them to have a great career at the University of South Carolina. Here's the deal with him. And Beamer was at one of the welcome home tours last night. John Whittle from thebigspur.com got a chance to talk to him. And he did say that, Kam wanted a better opportunity to play. He was not in the 2 deep after spring. He had kind of played some tackle, some guard. It's a shame after all the work that he put in at Carolina to get his body reshaped. And I think down the road, he would have played. I think he's an agent like everybody else. He was a highly rated recruit. Everybody needs offensive linemen, though there are more offensive linemen, especially from lower levels in the transfer portal now than there was. So I don't know. I don't know where he'll end up. I think somebody will take a chance on him. I don't know that it's a big chance. I think that he's in his second year, redshirt freshman. I know Josiah Thompson, his classmate, started last year, but that's Josiah's at a different point in his development than Kam. And that happens I tell the story all the time about Cam Smith and Jamie Robinson. Jamie Robinson was ready to play, got in, played as a true freshman. Smith redshirted. Smith did not play well when he did play in 2020. Then all of a sudden, Muschamp gets fired. Half the secondary walks out the door immediately and opts out, and then he gets to play, and they pick on him. Missouri picks on him a little bit, and then boom, the light comes on. No problems out of Cam Smith. Cam Smith ended up being drafted higher than Jamie Robinson at the end of the day. So there, I mean that's one of those things where it's just it's like the tortoise and the hare. You know, slow and steady sometimes wins the race. Not always. Sometimes though, and especially on the offensive line. So I thought there was a chance Kam Pringle could maybe get into the two deep this year. That was my projection for him. Obviously, he was not after spring and wants to go someplace maybe he can see the field. But it wasn't really about this year with him. It was about down the road. And so, it's disappointing because he's in state. But like I said, you can't avoid this. You can't avoid this. And I liked Kam Pringle, so maybe I'm in that bucket where, man, somebody that's a player that I liked and had hopes for is out the door. So, college football. But you want to, like I said, you can't avoid attrition. Guys going in the transfer portal. I mean, it's impossible, right? Because, these days coaches work very, very hard to have great relationships with families and players, and their coaches do. And it's still college football from the standpoint of, you're providing resources not only for football, but for academics and life. Everybody that talks about this being an employment situation, I think loses track of that. What kind of job has the types of benefits that a college football player gets? I mean, seriously, what kind of job is going to pay you, 400 grand a year on average to play a sport and then provide you? And look, I've seen NFL training facilities. They don't hold a candle to your big time college facilities, right? I mean, you're talking the difference between like Hilton Garden Inn and which is functional and nice, I think, in most instances, and like the Ritz Carlton. I mean, that's the difference, right? Maybe not quite that dramatic. I'll throw in like a regular old Hilton or Marriott, right? Versus nice, right? Versus the Ritz Carlton. I mean, that's the difference. Because prior to all this pay for play, NIL, whatever you want to call it, where universities had to eventually, especially with the House settlement, they're going to, use their resources to pay players. All the money that was invested in players was invested in amenities. I mean, so what other job, if this is employment, what other benefits package do you get at a job where, and not just a job where you're the CEO and maybe they sweeten the pot and let you use the corporate jet, to get you over. I mean, that happens. We know that. But what kind of job is entry level, right? Right. Because they're coming in entry level, and your salary escalates quite a bit, obviously, as we've seen, the more, I guess, experience you have. And, you get a nutritionist, a dietitian to custom make meals for you every day, three meals every day. You get access to professional level training staff that's going to put you in optimal shape and work you out every day. The nicest equipment, one of the nicest facilities. Most places have. Carolina's got a really nice football ops building, but most places have really nice football facilities, right? You get to live in the best on-campus housing there is if you choose to live on campus, but you're making enough money, you can go rent whatever, wherever, and that's fine too. Most of these guys lease cars. That's not really part of the package, but they're well taken care of in that regard too. You get all your education paid for when other people have to pay, obviously. All of that, 100% of that, so it prepares you for life. You get access to mental health, You get access to health, doctors, trainers, whatever you want, plus professional development. Just about every perk. And look, do people understand that that cost money? It costs money to pay everybody, and they're all working for 80, 85 to 105, I guess it's 105 guys. So, yeah, I mean, that's a sweet job, dude. I mean, it's not, the value has gone up cash wise, but it's also gone. I mean, but you also still have all this other stuff that programs have invested in. And honestly, I think the same folks that keep talking about exploitation and money and all this other stuff and players need to be, they would complain if some of that stuff were taken away. You let some organization cut out, mental health and all this other stuff that benefits, like they're going to just hit the ceiling, right? Never mind, it costs money. So my point is, coaches do a really good job of building relationships with the players and helping them through life and selling that part of their program. Um, but what they can't control are agents. They can't, and I'm not saying Cam's agent is to blame for this. I looked it up. Seems like a pretty decent human being that also, represents coaches, and it's like a real agent, not a not real agent. So, uh, so that's fine. I'm not saying that's what happened here, but that's generally speaking why you just never know because you never know who makes the decisions. And frankly, I don't think coaches have time to sit there and buddy with agents. Nor do I think they should. And there's not a coach out there that does in college. Not that they don't have relationships with them and won't talk to them, but they got other people to handle that. Because they're too busy. I mean, there's only so many hours in a day. So that's why it's kind of, you'll have some unexpected things pop up, and things that you're like, oh, wow. And look, I wish Kam Pringle the best. We all should. He just, I guess he felt like maybe if he went someplace else that he would get on the field and wants to play just like everybody. And so we'll see what happens moving forward with him. I'm not sure if anybody else will or not. Another thing Beamer said was probably not going to take a kicker. So what that tells me is that Mason Love is probably going to handle all the kicking duties, which is not ideal, as I said, but it works. Mason, I mean, after hearing about that, I didn't see it, but everybody universally told me during the field goal pressure situation that Mason Love drilled one from 40 that would have been good from 60. He has a great leg. Shout out to Latte Lance Player, one of the members of our Club Chief VIP deal that's in the chat box every day. Good friend of mine from Johnsonville, because he's been calling this about Mason Love. But that's fine. I don't really care if the same guy punts and kicks, as long as he can kick and punt. Doesn't bother me. I don't care who does it. I mean, you can bring somebody out of the student body as long as he can kick. And Carolina, last year I didn't think Alex Herrera had a bad year. That's a people are upset because Carolina lost, and so they're trying to blame somebody. Whenever you lose, you can't really blame one thing. Just even like in the LSU game, number one, you can't really blame Herrera. I mean, I blame the refs over Herrera, but number two, you really can't blame the refs totally for that because Carolina had their chances, and all of a sudden the defense couldn't stop LSU, and LSU isn't sitting on that many points if you get a few more stops. That's a heck of a ball game, by the way. That's one of the silver linings. You're on ABC, you host College Game Day. You got the number one broadcast crew in, and LSU, I think a lot of people were thinking LSU would beat Carolina because they were quote unquote desperate, right? Oh God, they're desperate coming in here. And it was a great football game. I mean, for a noon kickoff, the crowd was crazy. It was really good. They just lost. So, but Alex Herrera, I don't you don't blame him for that and blame him for missing a way, way out of his range field goal at Alabama. Um, he did, and that's it. Some of the shorter ones he missed, yeah, that's not good. And they did miss healthy Mitch Jeter. I think we all know Mitch Jeter was a pretty good kicker. But the issue with that, with me kind of defending him, ended up being that I looked around. I guess it just got lost on me, and everybody in the country is hitting 50-something yard field goals like it's the NFL. And so, yeah, that does give you a disadvantage when you don't have a kicker that can kick the ball. So I don't care who it is, just hopefully they can make some 50-yarders, you know. And so, yeah, so that was a big news note from Beamer last night. So one of the most significant things I believe that came out of the spring game that should make everyone happy, and really the whole spring is, and you can find it in Beamer's public comments, is that the 2025 class looks like they're really excited about it, and that's just not the receivers. Beamer's mentioned it several times. Now, this class was a sort of an interesting class. You guys know that the 2024 class, which now has two less members, as Kam Pringle and Wendell Gregory have gone. So it's getting even smaller in numbers, but there are some really good players in that class. Dylan Stewart, Fred Johnson, Mazio Bennett. The list goes on and on and on. And they got a lot of good portal guys too. But just talking high school here. But the class was Michael Smith's in that class. I can keep going. Josiah Thompson. It's smaller in numbers, right? I think they found some signed 15, 16. And nationally ranked probably would have been higher had it been a bigger class. Well, 25 is a bigger type of class from the high school ranks. In-state heavy. And it ended up, I think when Taylor Edwards left, and there was that period where it was right during a critical recruiting time too in July where guys were making decisions, and Darren Usher came in, and it was that transition was ill-timed. And so Carolina lost some guys during that period that they thought they were going to get. I'm not saying they definitely would have gotten them at Taylor State, but I do believe they would have gotten some. And that position now, I mentioned building relationships, all that good stuff. That position, director of player personnel, some call it a GM. That's everything in recruiting. That's kind of the point man. You used to have a coach that was designated as the recruiting coordinator, and Shane Beamer did that under Steve Spurrier, and so it was a on staff guy that headed it up. The coach, your 9 assistant coaches or whatever at the time, they were the guys that went and got players, and they still do. But the point man is the player personnel guy, and unlike before where you had personnel guys that were kind of behind the scenes, they helped set up official visits, stuff like that. These guys are now the point guys, and gals. There's some females that do it too. And so that's your contact. That's like your number one. So they're actually recruiting. And so in the past, when your lead recruiter would walk out the door and a kid's about to make a decision, that's a problem. Well, imagine a guy being your lead recruiter on just about everybody. I mean, yeah, that was tough. So there weren't a lot. I mean, I didn't even have high expectations. I was like, well, just do the best you can. It'll be in-state heavy. There'll be some developmental guys, whatever. Well, lo and behold, they end up taking, two guys reclassify that were studs. They end up flipping some guys down the stretch. And it ended up being a top 20 class. Now, they all come in. I don't think that there was, outside of the receiving core, obviously, there wasn't as many guys that I kind of looked at and went, well, they'll probably play or whatever. And, these guys, there's still a lot of developmental guys. Well, since the moment they step foot on campus, there's been nothing but praise across the board for every one of these guys, just about. there's some players that aren't here yet. Donovan Murph's one. Max Kelly, the kicker, is one. Maybe Max Kelly's a kicker, true freshman. Who knows? Christian Ingram, the defensive tackle, Mike Tyler from over at Hammond, tight end. They're all not in yet. But the ones that are, been nothing but praise. And so, your long term projection or your long term hope for a guy like Shed Surratt from Gaffney. Well, all of a sudden he's winning awards and could be in the two deep. Maybe that's why Kam Pringle left, because Cam was working kind of at guard ish, some tackle. That's kind of what Shed does. So maybe that was a reason. He's doing very well. Donovan Darden, AJ Holloway from Buford is looking good. You got Kendall Daniels back there in the secondary. It's not just, and even, Beamer mentioned Anthony Addison and Quay Dodd the other day at defensive end, and some folks I talked to that were at the spring game specifically talked about Quay Dodd, looking really good physically. My guy Clint, who loves recruiting, big time listener, he mentioned it. And so on thebigspur.com, thanks, shout out Clint. But I trust Clint. Clint knows what he's looking at. We don't always agree, but nobody always agrees on players. And so you kind of look across the board at 2025, and the word I would use is promising. I don't want to sit here and shoot off fireworks and, you know, do a dance and perform a musical number and all that good stuff about it yet. But I do think it's promising and probably better than, in August of last year that we thought. I, Frankly, I think you say the same thing about the football program. Football program is better than we thought in August of last year, isn't it? But and that shows me too that because there weren't 2025 wasn't a whole lot of obvious guys. In-state guys. Brian Rowe. Here's an example. They got Brian Rowe. Brian Rowe was a high three-star guy with a nice offer list from North Carolina. He's one of the first. I think he may have been the first player to commit in 2025. Nobody thought about Brian Rowe. Nobody, had a passing idea about this guy until he got to campus. Well, let me back up. Ben Briner, who works for our website, thebigspur.com, he actually did go and see him play. Ben lives in Charlotte, so Ben went out on assignment, saw him play, and took this film, and the guy's just jumping over people and getting. It's high school, so hey, Brian Rowe. And so we didn't even think about it. Everybody freaked out, melted down over Malik Clark. Even Shane Beamer talked about that meltdown. That was funny. He ended up flipping back. You never want to lose a receiver anybody out of Rock Hill. But that came back together. And then so Brian Rowe shows up, and all you hear about during bowl practices with the young receivers is Brian Rowe. And then I think in the spring game, boy, I loved him. I thought, wow, this guy, he's fast, he's springy, he's got good ball skills. He's going to be a great player. And lo and behold, we find out later, Georgia went in hard in the paint on him late, tried to flip. I mean, there were teams that tried to flip him the whole time. But because of the timeline, because he committed early, and I think we always I do the same thing, folks. Don't get me wrong. An early commit, I forgot, because the buzz and the narrative and what we talk about is the uncommitted. That sounds medieval. We must talk about the uncommitted. I don't know. Weird, huh? But we talk about the uncommitted. It is a medium that lends itself to that. And when I say medium, I'm talking recruiting websites, social media channels, however we consume recruiting news these days. The industry gears itself toward the uncommitted because it's a little more exciting. It's a game that is yet to be determined. We love going back and watching old games. We're happy watching old games. Me especially, games Carolina wins or games they play well. I love watching good plays. You mentioned that LSU game. I go back and watch it. I don't watch the end, but I watch it. But a lot of big plays in that one. And we like it, but what excites us more? The games that are yet to be played, yet to be determined. And so that's why we spin forward, constantly spinning forward. Not too far forward, but forward nonetheless. So you forget about a guy like Brian Rowe. You forget about a guy like Anthony Addison, and they're all good players. So this 2025 class is, I think it's a great, great sign because what you don't want to do is have a class like 2022, unfortunately, Beamer's first full cycle. A lot of guys in that class that just weren't ended up not being good enough. Some were, and there's some still playing on the team now. But if you notice, there was a lot of outbound and then a lot of inbound portal to kind of replace those guys. That's the beautiful thing about the portal, is if there's guys you misevaluate, then you can always replace them later. And so why do they just evaluate them? I think uh, one of the big issues with that was there wasn't a lot of time. Nowadays, with guys signing in December, you basically start early, evaluating them, getting to know them, that kind of thing, and then you sign them. And it's almost a 2 year process. Well, outside of Zoom calls that year, they didn't get to have any in person contact till June of 2022. And then they had camps and rushed through the camps, and boom, put a class together. And on paper, it was a good class, on paper, a very good class, but that's on paper, And then they got Spencer Rattler and Juice Wells and Austin Stogner out of the portal, and it looked pretty good. I mean, Nick Eamon-Warray was in the 2022 class, and I can't complain too much, but there were some numbers issues. So if it weren't for the portal, there would be a weird imbalance. South Carolina this year would probably be heading into a season where they're going to be super young. That's yeah, that's why I like the portal. But anyway, I kind of got sidetracked there. And so you don't want to have a repeat of that. But 2023 is solid. There has been some attrition, but they're solid, and you're going to get that. 2024, you know how I feel. Now 2025, and then you look at 2026, and it's going to be another really good class. I don't know where it's going to rank, folks. I think some of these South Carolina kids in particular probably need to be ranked a little higher. Probably will be according to composite, Desmond Green and guys like that. By the way, South Carolina's doing very well with Desmond Green, the big offensive lineman from Timberland. Not done, but I think Carolina, I reported this on the Big Spur last week, kind of reconfirmed it. I like where things are heading for them right now. Now, there's some other potential potholes or whatever, but Desmond Green, certainly massive guy, big guy. But anyway, so, there's going to be guys go up. So I don't know where it's going to end up ranking. I don't. I mean, this year's class, if you'd asked me even in like November, and I said, man, maybe inside the top 25, lo and behold, it's up in the 20s, top 20. I think other teams have, I haven't looked. It was 18 last time I looked at it by composite. So, I mean, I don't know where it's going to rank, but the idea is this is you got to go back and look class to class to class. Number one, number one is not necessarily where did it rank, but you do look at that. So where did it rank? How many guys are playing and contributing? How many guys are living up to their ranking or surpassing expectations? So in other words, TJ Sanders, good solid 3-star out of Marion, definitely surpassed his expectations. So that's actually like getting a 4-star. And how many of those guys, are making an impact on your football team? And so then the idea is to look back in 2027 and go 23, 24, 25, 26, they were really good classes. And that's how Spurrier did it. We don't talk about it a whole lot, but Spurrier, His '06 class rivaled his '07 class as far as NFL talent. That's how, with defense and stuff, he was able to kind of keep it above water, until Marcus Lattimore came in and all that. Because you had a class in '06 that didn't rank high, 35th in the country, but you had Eric Norwood, Darian Stewart, Captain Monerlin in that class. Emmanuel Cook was in that class. I mean, how many NFL players in that class? Really, really good class. And then '07 was the big class on paper, ranked sixth in the country. It was a larger class with 30 something folks. Some of those guys didn't pan out, but you got Steven Garcia in there and others. And then you go to '08 and you got a couple of guys there that were good. And then '09, Gilmore, Jeffrey, that group. Swearinger, I believe, was in that class, or was Swearinger 2010? I think he was '09. So, and then, next year, Marcus Lattimore, Brandon Shell, I mean, it kind of, every year they got different speakers. Now, Spurs teams did not have a lot of depth. They just stayed healthy. Um, they just had a lot of their top 22 to 33 best and could compete with anybody. So we'll see. We'll see. But I think it's very encouraging if you're looking again at how the sausage is made, how does this program continue to have success and build a foundation. It's not just about the portal. You still have to recruit high schools. This is how, and it's a very promising thing that Shane Beamer continues to mention 2025. And based on feedback, there are a lot of players in this class yet again to kind of build on that other class and other class. You know what I'm saying. So that's good. That's good news. So I want to share some good news with you guys, in my opinion, about the recruiting. Later today, John Strickland will be on the morning show. Phil and I will be along with Inside the Gamecocks, the show, to talk a little more about recruiting and football and the portal and all other sports and off-topic stuff and all that good stuff. This has been Coffee with JC Shurburtt. Have a great day, everyone. Holla at you soon.